Hello and welcome to today's episode of Impact Schools podcast. So today I'm joined with the hardcore closer himself, Mr. Ryan Stewman. So, wow, I mean, your stuff in your Facebook group, firstly, I'm scrolling through my feed and I just see these posts from you. And every single time I feel like I just laugh out loud. Like you have this humor towards the way in which you teach sales that I think is very, very captivating. And which is clearly why you've been able to build such an amazing, amazing community of both sales professionals and business owners. So can you just tell me more about how this whole cult came about? Because I feel like that's what you have. You have this tribe of just engaged fans.
Yeah, I think it's really, cult's probably a good word for it. Like there's a lot of negative stigma around that word, but there's also good cults too. Like probably church is a good cult, you know what I mean? Something to think about. And for me, I looked about 10 years ago and I saw that all the salespeople were the same, like Grant Cardone, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy. They're all like suit and tie, stuffy old, like, kind of gray hair guys. And I'm not hating on those. Those guys are legends, but that's not the generation that's coming up, right? And I remember about 10 years ago, I was telling Cardone, hey, I'm going to be this, sales trainer guy. And he's like, well, you're covered in tattoos and you talk about drinking and partying and shit like that. And like, it's never going to work. You're going to have to put a suit and tie on. You're going to have to go B2B. And I was like, no, I don't want to do any of that because I don't believe that's where, like, even in my corporate job that I had long ages ago, they always wanted us to dress up and like put a, button-up shirt and stuff like that on. It's like I showed up every day in Vans and a t-shirt despite the dress code because we never met customers, right? Like, and now, especially with COVID and shit, we're not meeting customers anymore, so they don't care how we're dressed. Most people have like on a Zoom, they have like a fancy shirt on and no pants. You know what I mean? That's like literally the American dress code right now for corporations. And so, I just wanted to be the guy that was good at sales, that was just himself, just a real dude that had real awards and had made real sales. Because a lot of these guys that were in the sales training at the time when I started in that industry, they didn't have any real accolades. Most of them teaching stuff. Zig did, he sold a whole bunch of copiers for Xerox, so he had some accolades. But, Cardone, I'm a big fan. That guy showed us what's possible. But like how you go from selling fish to raising billions of dollars, there's a step or two that just seem missing in the story. And so I set out to make like every aspect of my life, public since 2008. And because of that, people, they didn't at first, but because of that, 12 years, 13 years later, people are like, hey man, I've seen this dude do this. We've seen him sell software. We've seen him sell mortgages. We've seen him flip a whole bunch of homes. We've seen him build and invest in restaurants and businesses. And because of that, over the years and over time, I just became that person they looked up to. They're like, hey, you can be a real person. You don't have to be stuffy. You don't have to be, all professional. You can cuss and still go to church. So I just showed them like, you don't have to be all one way or another. And I think that most people fall in the middle of all things anyway, whether it be politics, social issues, or whatever. Like most people are in the middle. And I noticed in our industry, nobody was in the middle. So I was like, well, I'm just going to be me, right? I'm just going to show up. And, I've been doing this for 11 years full time, and I don't have any 1-star reviews or rip-off reports or any of that because we make shit right with people, even sometimes when it hurts, but that's just part of business. But, I believe a big part of selling is the service side of it. So we've done really well there, which has kept a lot of people coming and paying for stuff. I have some clients that have been around 5 or 6 years, year after year, that just renew with us,
That's awesome. And we were just talking about that right before you came on, the number of people who are inside of all of your programs. And that goes to show, I mean, selling doesn't have to be this evil, bad thing that a lot of people think it is, right? We have a lot of clients who are coaches and course creators and people who are really skilled in an area. And they now want to turn their skill into something that they can sell online. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, they think that in order to sell, they have to become this different person and they have to change their personality when it comes to getting on that call. Or they just send this quick little email and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, the price is $2,000, hit send. And then they're just, they don't even expect to reply. And so I think that what's interesting about your brand is the whole hardcore closer element to it, because some people will hear that and they'll be put off. But then that goes to show that what you're doing is totally in alignment with retaining those clients, because of the fact that, you want to turn away people because then you get the ones who aren't going to give those 1-star reviews. And that's one of the important elements to sales, is that knowing who you're fighting for and fighting against. Yep. But let's talk about this, because hardcore is pretty hardcore, right? Of course. And so when it comes down to hardcore closing, I mean, how much is too much? What would you say? What's your whole philosophy behind that?
Well, I got the nickname Hardcore Closer because I've always been like top producer everywhere that I've ever worked. Mm-hmm. And, you may not know this about me, but I've been in and out of prison all my 20s, right? Wow. So I did almost 3 years in prison. And so that was kind of how they gave me the nickname. They're like, Stewman, he's hardcore, man. Like, because, I was always like, I would go into prison, and this is crazy. Did I even saying this, but like go to prison and get out, and I would be behind, so I'd have to work really hard. And sales was the only thing that was there for me. My mom and dad wasn't there. My wife, girlfriend, all these things that you see in the movies waiting outside of prison when you get out, none of that shit existed for me, right? It was like they open up the door, and I'm like, shit, man. Like, they didn't even have an Uber back then. It's like, y'all got a bus or something leaving here, right? And so, they always just called me like hardcore. And then I got a job back in 2011 for a short period of time so I could have insurance when my oldest son was being born, right? And I needed a real job so that I had company insurance because she was already pregnant and I couldn't get it on my entrepreneur insurance stuff. And so I would go behind all the sales guys that couldn't close deals, and I would be the guy that sat down at the car dealership and closed the deal with you, right? Like, I didn't show cars and shit. It was like, if somebody couldn't sell you a car, then you would come up to the desk and be like, I need your help, Ryan, right? And so they started calling me the hardcore closer because they'd always be like, that dude's hardcore. Yeah, he's the hardcore closer. And it's kind of stuck. So in 2012, I was like, man, I'm going to register this website. And selling cars and mortgages, you kind of do have to be, especially cars, you got to be a hardcore person, right? You got to be able to you got to know all the tricks, man, because people will lie to you and connive you and everything else. And that's just part of it. They say buyers are liars, all that. But I believe that's dying off, which, that's still my nickname and my handle. But like, none of our companies are named that anymore and stuff, right? And I thought about getting away from it, but there's so much branding behind it that I just, it's there. It's always my roots. But the truth is, I think we're getting away from that. I think our generation, and I'm obviously way older than you, but like our generation and your generation and younger, they see this shit miles away, right? They know when you go to the Ford dealership that the guy in a suit standing up out front waiting for you, they know that guy's like a snake. He's a shark. You know what I mean? And we've been pitched so much in so many commercials and have to buy so much shit and really rely on internet and convenience these days that I think that's going away, And I see a lot of people in our group that are starving, and they don't realize the reason why they're starving in the Sales Talk with Sales Pros group that are good salespeople, but they're trying these old school tactics and they don't work. They might work on our grandparents, they might work on our parents, but they're really not working on that 45 and below generation anymore. So what does work is service. Right? Like, if you actually show somebody that you care and you take care of them, and you actually, instead of trying to sell them something, you give them the information they need that's enough to make the decision, which requires a lot of legwork on the front end for a salesperson before they go into the call, right? But if you do that, you would be surprised. Well, you probably wouldn't, but maybe some of your listeners would be surprised. There's nobody out there that cares, especially in sales. They care about their commission check. But when you as a salesperson can be the person that takes care of them and shows them that you care about them and that you have their best interests in mind, it makes all the difference in the world. You really don't have to sell somebody, And that's what's crazy is a lot of these folks will go out there and they're trying these old school, very hardcore sales tactics. And I'm not saying they don't work, but they work a hell of a lot better on the older generations. But the new generation, man, they just want the information. If they're going to buy it, they're going to buy it. Somebody that's 40 years old doesn't need to think about it overnight. They don't need to talk to their wife. Like, they're either going to buy it or they're not. You got to give them all the information and the reasons why and the benefits, and that's it. I think it really only takes two things to close sales. And it's not sales training. It's not a book. It boils down to two things. Number one is you got to have empathy. Right? But they have to know that you have empathy. And so what I mean is you can't just get on the call. Like, I might be doing a sales call with you, And 3 minutes into the call, I'm like, I know this chick's problem. I can fix it for her. But I can't say that because you don't know that I've had 10,000 of these calls. I got to let you go through your process, which means I need to get you talking. And the more you talk, the better I listen. Most people don't listen. Kids don't listen. Boss don't listen. Wife don't listen. You know what I mean? So like when you're the person that actually cares enough to listen, that's light years ahead of what's mostly going on in their life anyway. That's why people pay a damn therapist. And so, but when they understand that that you understand their story because they've told it to you. So empathy really comes from listening because they have to be the one that understands that you're empathetic towards their situation. Once you got that, the other half of the equation is simply confidence. And confidence comes from product knowledge, right? If you know your shit and you know their problem, then you got the confidence and the empathy together, the sale will get made.
Oh man, it's so true, isn't it? Sometimes you'll be on a call with someone or a meeting and they'll literally tell you exactly what they want. Exactly. And then at the end, when you kind of tell them the strategy in which you think it makes sense to get there, then you say pretty much the exact same words that they said. You're like, yes. They say, yes, you finally understand me.
Yep.
You really get what I want. And it's unbelievable how just through listening, right? You know what they say, one mouth and two ears for a reason.
Yep.
And just through listening to them, it allows them to see that you are someone that they can trust. And that's just through listening. And that's what I wanted to talk about really, is because I feel that nowadays, given that there is the ability to just Google things and research and find out prices so easily, one of the reasons why we still say to our clients and we for ourselves, we believe so deeply on still taking a sales call is because of the fact that then you do get to be a little more selective about the clients that you're working with. Because if you don't take a call, then you risk actually signing people that might be a nightmare to work with. So I'd love to hear your philosophy behind sales calls versus just closing through the DMs or something like that, because this is one of the things that I think a lot of people get a little stuck upon.
Well, you know, if you've done your job good, is not this, because half of sales is making the sale. The other half is delivering what you said you were going to deliver to the client in the manner that you told them they were going to get it, right? That's the big half. The sale's the easy part usually, and most people screw up on the back end. But for me, we haven't ran advertisements, like paid advertisements, since 2019. And I was spending 50 or so thousand on average a month for advertising, which isn't really that much, but you know, it was consistent, $500,000 a year. And 2019, whoever we hired at the time that was running our ads got my account shut down. And I thought, well, shit, you know, I guess now we'll see how much of our money comes from ads, right? Until I figured out maybe I'll start another account or whatever. And the next month our sales kept going up, and the next month our sales kept going up. And I'm like, oh shit, man, we were wasting money with the ads, because I realized, and it took this happening for me to realize that most of our business is from referrals. And so most people have either seen somebody change and been like, hey man, what's the change that I've seen in you? And they're like, oh, it's this Apex program, and they become a referral, right? And I believe that most of the time we got to get on a call with people, especially the way that we do it is we have an application process. So they go in, they read what all it's about, and then they apply if they're still interested, right? It's like page 1, sales page. Page 2 is just a Survey Monkey type of application. And in there, it asks where they're at in business. Are they married? Do they have kids? You know, what kind of money they make? Do they have employees? This kind of stuff, so that we can know which one of those 3 levels we were talking about to put them on. And if we're going to put somebody in like level 1, which is open for everybody, right? Because you can't be perfect if you're just starting. So it's literally open to everyone. We do a lot of that through the DM, and that's a $3,000 thing. We do a lot of that through email and DM and stuff. But our other 2 programs were very selective. Because you're right. About 3 years ago, I had 2 bad apples. I had about 115 people paying $25,000, and I had 2 bad apples get into it, and it was a ripple effect of toxicity, and ended up losing like 50 of those people, right? And it wasn't, and all of them were like, hey man, we love you, but these guys is, and I had already kicked them out and everything. It was a big nightmare, and it was my bad, but it was a big learning lesson, because I'm like, man, you got to really be selective with this shit, because one person just cost me millions of dollars, you know? Mm-hmm. And it took a long while to build that back up, but it was a big lesson.
Oh man, we actually had a similar situation a couple of years back too, and that's where for me that changed everything.
Yeah,
and it just comes back.
That's a big slap to the face when it happens.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's very, very damaging the effect that one client can have when they start speaking to other clients. And so back then, a couple of years ago, that's when I was like, not only am I going to be super selective about the clients that I have coming on board, but also I'm going to be even more careful about the team members that I have fulfilling on working with those clients. Yeah. Because when you're not the one who's doing it all anymore, which, you know, in order to scale your business, you simply can't be. When you have a team of coaches and a team of support staff, and they perhaps are telling you that they're doing things, but they're actually not, then my goodness me, it still does fall upon you though. And so that was when, as an entrepreneur, I learned that despite the fact that I could blame my head of coaches and I could blame my COO, at the end of the day, it falls on me, right? It's still my responsibility for not making sure that my team were following all the checks and balances that they were doing when they were hiring and when they were bringing on clients and everything like that. And so that's when we became way more careful about that whole entire thing. But I love how you just mentioned that. And one other thing is this for the salespeople. Look, there is nothing more rewarding than when you sell someone who you were, you know, maybe they were on the edge. They were a little unsure about if they wanted to become a client or not. So I have it with my team whereby, you know, every single week they'll go through and look at the results that the clients that they've sold to and that they've enrolled, see how they're doing. And so they actually get texts saying like, thank you so much for selling me this program. Thank you so much for showing me that this is something that I needed. Because, you know, I think as a salesperson, like, and even as a business owner, it can be really hard sometimes to see the effect that you're having on people's lives until you start getting messages like that. But sorry, you look like you were going to say something there.
Yeah, you know, I lost my phone yesterday when I was in New Orleans. I left it in the driver. One of my buddies was there. Luckily enough, he'll bring it back to me on Monday. But I would read you some of the messages that I get every day, you know, and I know I have coaches as well and a sales staff here. And you know, we get messages from, I just bought my first, you know, exotic car, to I just bought my 20th exotic car, to, you know, there was a guy named Mike Claudio who sent me a message 2 days ago, and he was like, I just was able to retire my wife. You know, she doesn't have to work anymore. She can raise our kids. And I bought her a brand new mom mobiles, like an Escalator or Tahoe or something like that. You know, he's like, so she no longer has to work. She's got a brand new vehicle, and I'm building our dream. You know, and it's just like, that's so cool, because that not only affects Mike, it affects Mike's clients, it affects Mike's employees, it affects Mike's kids and probably their relationships and friends and his wife and their friends. So most people get into this, and I tell people this all the time, like, oh yeah, I think I'm going to do like side hustle as a coach. And I'm like, this shit's not easy. You know, you're like literally, no matter what you're coaching somebody at, you're like literally have someone's livelihood in your hands. You know, you got to be the example, you got to be a leader, and you have someone's livelihood. And then the type of people that I coach are oftentimes some of the biggest players in their industry in the country. So they might have thousands of employees. So that ripple effect from the head that's doing this stuff, and then it goes into all the thousands of employees and the difference they see. And then what about their friends? Like, most people don't understand how important it is, because if you do shit wrong, the same vibes go through all those people, but it's the wrong stuff, right? This isn't to me like I know this sounds crazy, but to me, like being a coach, this is just how I feel in my life and what it's led to me. It's a calling like being a pastor. You know, it's can you make money from it? Absolutely, right? Can it be lucrative? Absolutely. But it you either got that in you and you really want to help people, but if you like get into this business and it's just for the money, it won't work. You know, it really won't. You got to genuinely care for people, and it's hard because motherfuckers will make it hard for you to care for them sometimes. You know what I mean? That's just part, and you still got to get past that. You got to think it's like, just because one person's this way, it's like we got thousands that are, you know, the other direction. So, you know, I think that's a big role, but it all boils down to just taking care of your people, you know?
Facts, yeah, and well, you said that is so accurate. I mean, it's sometimes so difficult being the one to force the result, right? Sometimes that's really what people need. It's just that constant accountability, and it's realizing that is going to be part of it, and it can be very frustrating, very, very, very frustrating. I remember when I was an online fitness coach, that was how I started. Oh man, it's when you know how someone can get the results so simply, but they're struggling to follow through. That's part of it, isn't it? That's identifying that the way that you're teaching has to change because you have to get people bought in. It's same with your team, right? If you don't have buy-in and you're just commanding from the top, then of course your team aren't going to be executing the way that you want them to because they feel like you're just dictating their life.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's where that's going to separate the good from the great, right? But I think ultimately, as a coach, as an expert, as someone who, you know, you're good at what you do in your field, whatever it is, even if you're like an interior designer, I think this is where it can be so valuable to have a good salesperson on staff or even a sales team when you get there, because it adds that layer of protection in between you and then also then, you know, actually them becoming a client. Because I think that sometimes when you are good at what you do and you know the results that you can get for people, you can be a little too nice. Right? So you'll get on a call with them, you'll get to a meeting and maybe you're wanting to charge 20K, but you'll be like, oh yeah, but for you, I can do it for 5 and I'll also give this for you for free and that for you for free. And
a lot of people do that.
Yeah, right? Well, firstly, why do you think they do that?
A lot of people don't think they deserve the sale in the first place. You know, I would watch sales guys at mortgages, cars, insurance. I've seen it across every industry that will make a sale and then they can't believe they make the sale, so they screw up the service side of it, right? It's like, and a lot of people just can't believe that they made it, especially if you're not like, for me, I can't believe I didn't make the sale. If I lost, you know what I mean? But a lot of people don't operate that way. They're so excited, or they're scared that if they said 20 grand, they would run the person off and they need the money, so they're willing to do it at 5, and they think they've got to throw this extra shit in to secure that 5, which really, to a professional, depends on who you're selling to, but to like, if I was to do that to my clients, they'd be like, he sounds desperate. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And then they wouldn't want to do it. And then a normal person would rationalize that going, shit, I think it's worth 20. They don't even think it's worth 5 plus the bonus that I gave them. But the truth is they were expecting it to be 20. So it sounded too damn good to be true at 5. So they don't want to buy it.
Yeah, that's true.
If Rolex called you and they say, I have a diamond platinum watch for you for 5 G's, you would be like, I don't know about all that, right? Like you what's wrong with it? You know, why are you calling me for that, right? And a lot of salespeople don't understand. They sound the same way, right? It should have been 20 grand. You have to say it's 20 grand or it sounds stolen, right? Like if I call you and I'm gonna sell this Rolex for 5 grand, you're like, who'd you steal it from, Ryan? Right? Like and a lot of people don't understand that. You know, especially in the coaching world, these people are expecting life-changing results on one level or another, and you're like, yeah, that's $500. Like, wait a minute. You know? I
agree. And I think this is where price psychology is such a huge thing. And I think that in order to gain success in your own business, getting an understanding of the price psychology is fundamental. Because at the end of the day, if you can't grasp this concept, that's where I feel like you're going to have difficulties as a coach, as a consultant, as a salesperson. Because the problem when it comes to ensuring that your prices are fair, that they make sense, I think is comparing yourself to other people. But you don't know how they perform on the phone. You don't know what their actual program is like. You're just looking at the prices and you're just looking at bullet points of what's inside of that program.
Right.
They could be the exact same features, but they could be delivered in a totally different way. That's going to then change people's lives in different capacities. But okay, so one thing when it comes to something we spoke about before we hit record was power versus force when it comes to closing. And so I know that you spoke at an event about that exact topic recently. And so I think that this would be an incredibly valuable thing for you to discuss with us here, because it's kind of like pushing someone into a sale versus them being pulled. So I'd love to hear your philosophy behind that.
Well, for me, I would rather only talk to somebody who wants to do business with me. Mm-hmm. Right? Like most people that say you got to make a cold call, you got to make 100 cold calls to get one person on the hook and maybe make a sale from it, right? Like I don't want to do that. I don't want to talk to 99 no's. It's depressing. It's bad for your mental health. Like I just don't want to deal with it, you know?
Yeah.
So I try to position myself to only get a yes. And so what I learned is I read this book called Power versus Force, and it was about physics. And I thought really this applies to the sales and business world bigger than most people know. Force is something that happens immediately. So if I make a phone call, somebody answers, like I force them to answer, right? I force them to talk to me. It's not like they were going, hey, I hope Ryan Stewman, random salesperson, calls me here in a couple of minutes, right? Like I'm forcing them to stop what they were doing, put their attention on me, and let me try to change their mind on something that they may not have been looking for. Now, does that work? Sure, people do it all day, every day. But is it efficient? No, but it's effective, right? So what happens, though, is people get addicted to that dopamine of finding that next yes, and they stay in that comfort zone. And every day, that's what they do. Every day they go in, list of people, 100, 200, 300 phone calls, and that's their sales job all day, every day. They wonder why the fuck they're depressed and drink and all that other stuff. It's boring as shit, you know?
I did it. Yeah, I did it once.
We've all done it. When you don't have anybody to talk to, that's what you got to do, right? Same thing. You go knocking on doors, right? So, and these days people don't want strangers around anyway, but you're knocking on doors and most people are telling you no, maybe even calling the cops on you and shit, depending on what neighborhood it is, and people do that. And yes, does it work? Yes, you can make money knocking doors, right? Especially in specific industries like roofing and stuff. But at the same time, it's not efficient. In the time that you're knocking 10 or 15 doors in an hour, I can send an email to 50,000 people, in 5 minutes. And so that's the difference. See, force is something that people get caught up in. Once you start doing cold calls, if you never graduate, you stay there forever. You knock doors, you never graduate, you stay there forever. And by graduate means that you've got to do the stuff on the back end, collect data, be able to send the emails, all that stuff, the social media marketing. But power, most people don't get into the power side of things because it takes forever. See, force happens if I make 100 calls today, I'm guaranteed I'm going to get one sale, right? But if you write, let's say a power move would be to write an article for medium.com. It's free. You can write an article for it. Even if you can't write, you can have Siri transcribe your voice, put that in Grammarly, and then Grammarly will edit it for you, and you copy and paste it into Medium, right? Like, even if you can't write, an idiot can do that, right? But most people never do that because that article may not get them a customer today. It may not get them a customer tomorrow. The way that search engine optimization works, it's more likely not even going to show up for 3 or 6 months on Google search index anyway. But what I did today will reward me 3, 6, 8 months and forever down the road. I was doing a podcast the other day with my friend John Paramore. I was up in St. Louis, so I stopped by his office and he asked me, he said, you get about 50 or 60,000 leads a year for your business, but you don't run advertisements. Like, how do you do that? And I said, well, I've been blogging since 2012. I got about 4,000 articles. I've got about 3,000 podcasts that I've done. I've got 2,500 or so videos on YouTube. God knows how many posts on social media that I made. And if you search my name, it comes about 73,000 times because of syndication and Forbes and other things, copying websites and stuff. If each of those power moves, if each of those websites just gets me one lead a year, then I'm sitting on 70,000 leads every year, right? Some of them get me hundreds a month, some of them thousands a month. So, but in 2012, when I started writing these blog posts, nobody's fucking reading them, right? Podcasting's another one. It's another power move. But my first podcast had 6 listeners, the very first episode. The second episode, 0. I couldn't even keep the same 6 fucking people to come back to number 2, But now we have 2.1 million people that listen every month. And I put out 5 episodes a week. And the difference is I just never quit. But now, and what's crazy is from like 2011, I started podcasting. And in 2017, we finally started getting some momentum. Most people won't do something for 4 or 5 years until it starts to work, right? But now, again, 2.1 million people as of last month listen to my podcast. So was it worth those 4 or 5 years of getting no traction in order to have big traction like that? Fuck yeah, right? But power moves take time. If you think about it, like the most powerful thing I can think of is like the sun. The sun's 6.3 billion years to become that powerful, right? But people will go knock doors and they will make cold calls, but that's a one-time force thing that once it happens, it's not happening again. When I build a website, it's out there forever. When I make a video, it's out there forever. When I make a podcast, it's out there forever. When I get an article on medium.com or when I get some PR from Haro, whatever the case is, it's out there forever. And here's the cool thing that happens is, let's say you hear me. Let's say you're like, oh, I was with Ryan Stewman and we did a podcast. I'm like, who is that? And so you're like, look them up on Instagram, and they look me up, and then they go to the website, and then they see that I've got a group, and then they see that I've got a blog, and then they search my name, and they see that I'm on Forbes. Like, all these little points of familiarity, the next time somebody's like, hey, I'm in Ryan Stewman's course, it's like, oh man, I've been checking that guy out. All of a sudden it changes things, and I don't have to sell them as much. They've already, anything they wanted to know about me or about our programs is out there for them to figure out before they even waste my time talking to me. And I think those are power moves. And like I said, I've been doing them for a decade now, and it took a while. Like I said, the first 3-4 years, I wasn't getting any traction, but I just didn't quit. And now I'm getting a shitload of traction, and it's exploded our business, but it took a lot of time. Now, I'm a little hard-headed. You could probably do that faster. I did all the shit myself because I didn't have a whole lot of money. And, I'm trying to, figure out this whole business deal because I knew sales, but I didn't know anything about running a business back then. And so, I wrote my own articles, did my own websites. I built all my own shit. Now I obviously know how to delegate and pay and all that stuff. So you could do that faster than I did it if you delegate the work. But for me, I just did all the fucking work.
I love it. And that's the cool thing as well, because then you have all the systems set up on the back end so that, let's say you do need to go out and hustle a little bit, DM some people, get some sales calls booked through the DMs. If you're focusing on these power moves, as you say, such as getting your social media set up, having expert authority content, having a podcast, that means that when people come from the DM over to your platform, they see, wow, this person's legit.
Yep.
And then that immediately increases your credibility in their mind. And so I think that at that point, it's kind of fusing together sales and marketing, right? Power versus force kind of is like that.
Yep.
Because then you're able to lift your brand, and people are able to, it then decreases sales pressure in their mind, because it's like, oh wow, this person it's like, it must be divine timing that they found me.
Yes.
Despite the fact, in your mind, you're like searching hashtags and you're searching other people's posts,
right.
and it's like all of that, and they're like, oh wow, this is divine timing, because they then stumble across you. And I think that's cool. But okay, so let's talk about power moves then. A couple of them that people could actually take action on immediately. So obviously they can be blogging, they can be podcasting, but what would you say some of the more powerful ones that you have done that have allowed you to have this long-term result?
A daily post on Facebook. I mean, so many people, and maybe for you it's Instagram, but Facebook's been the place for me for all these years. And I just commit to making one post a day on Facebook. And some days I make more, but as long as so my routine is I wake up and I go to the gym first thing in the morning. I hate the fucking gym. And if I don't get it out of the way, then I won't do it. Right. So it's like, as soon as I open my eyes, like, shit, I got to get up, brush my teeth and go to the gym. Like, that's just, I got it in my head that if I hurry up before I'm all the way awake and I get through the gym before I'm all the way awake, then I'm winning for the day. Right. But when I get to the gym, that's my signal, my marker for me to make my posts on Facebook. I'm at the gym about 6:30 in the morning. And so as soon as I pull up to the gym, I get another 5 minutes, that I don't have to go in there just yet. I was buying myself a little bit of time, but it's also a reminder to post. So every morning, that's my routine. I go to the gym. That's when you get the post from me. And I've been doing that for, I don't know, 12, 15 years, however long I've been on Facebook at this point, and just consistently. And I treat it like a TV show. Like, if you like a TV show, it comes on at a certain time. Like, if you like Wheel of Fortune, it's like on right after the news every day or whatever, right? And so that shows you how many TV shows I know. I just like
I've never even heard of it.
Yeah, exactly. So American game show. But like, if you like that, like, it's on after the news, and that when the news is over, Wheel of Fortune's coming on. So I want my audience to be programmed that somewhere around 6:30 in the morning, the Stewman channel comes on. Right? And he's going to have something to either motivate, irritate, or inspire us or some shit like that, right? And I've been doing that for so long, and that's a huge power move, because guess what? Somebody hears my name, they go to Facebook and they scroll down, or they go through the years, because people will do that shit when they just first find out, and they see that I got back-to-back daily content. They're like, this dude knows what he's doing. And it's that social proof right there. Same thing whether you use LinkedIn or Instagram. My two social media channels that I use are Instagram and Facebook. Those are the two that I like. But man, just making a post a day on Instagram, I commit to 3 stories a day. Usually it's more because they're only 15 seconds, but as long as I'm in front of people every day, and it's not going to be my whole audience, only a fraction of people see your stuff, but as long as I'm in front of them every day, that's a power move, because when they think of what it is that I sell, I just want to be the guy they think of, even if they don't need it right now, or if their friend, I get tagged a lot on social media. Hey, who do you know that does this? Oh, hit up Stewman, right? It's perfect. That's a good referral for me, but it all comes from the familiarity of consistent daily posting, and it's free. It doesn't cost anybody anything. It's easy. You could even set it up to where it's like, by the time I get to the parking lot at my job, before I go in, I'm going to make my post real quick, or shit in the bathroom, whatever, but just commit to it once a day, at a specific time, because that matters. Because like if I'm a big fan of yours, and like sometimes you post at 9 in the morning, sometimes you post at 2 in the afternoon, sometimes 4 in the afternoon, depending on when I log in, I may never even see your shit. And you know how it is, out of sight, out of mind. If I don't see your shit, I don't think about you. Right? Because there's someone else in the newsfeed distracting me to get my attention. That's how it's set up. So you got to be that person that's consistent every day, and the time is important too.
Oh my gosh, so true. So I was on Clubhouse really consistently for like a few months, and I was getting 300 to 400 DMs a day, brand new DMs from new people. And in the past few weeks, I've barely been on it. I've been doing like real world stuff rather than going on Clubhouse, and the new DMs that we've been getting every day has dropped by half. Literally.
In Facebook or Instagram?
So this is in Instagram DMs.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I don't use Facebook kind of like
Okay.
you. I use it a little bit, not as much, mainly when we're in the process of doing a live challenge. But this is over there on Instagram.
Okay.
And so luckily we were able, because we've seen all these stats, because we got this new DM bot. So Facebook and Instagram are soon allowing the bot and actually approving it. My account got approved by Facebook early because of the volume. And so the really interesting thing was like we were looking at the numbers, and then we were able to correlate it directly to as soon as I started doing a live challenge, which is whereby I was off Clubhouse because I was spending time doing that, and then I was traveling and all this stuff. And it was crazy just to see how important consistency is, because if people don't have a reason to reach out to you because you're not top of mind for them for whatever reason, then of course they're gonna go elsewhere, or they just won't take the action. Because if they already had the motivation and the level of desire to take the action, they would have done it already, right? This is one of those problems with sales sometimes, is that if you are getting on calls with those people who are like 7 out of 10 or below, or 8 out of 10 or below, then the problem is that they don't have the desire and that urgency yet. And I think this is whereby, when it just going back to sales, having that qualification process is pretty critical. But you know what? When it comes to, I wanna wrap this around, just going back to the power moves one last time. So let's just talk about this directly with sales, okay? Because people, they really, really do struggle with sales. What is a power move that you feel like allows people to really be successful actually on the phone? Like, let's take it to the micro level here. On the phone, a power move that people can be doing that's going to allow them to position themselves where they can win every time.
You need two things if you're going to get on phones and sales. Number one is you need a good offer. Right? So the easiest way to write a good offer is how to get X without Y. X what they want, Y what they don't want. How to get 6-pack abs without having to do a crazy diet. How to make $10,000 a day without having to work a full-time job, right? Some shit like that, right? Obviously something legit. You don't want to lie, obviously, but the basic way to make an offer is what they want and then what they don't want, right? It's a really easy template to use. So once you can get your offer down, like some people, you ask them, hey, what do you do for a living? It's, well, back in the 6th grade, fuck, I don't care about that. I just want to know what your job is. Like some people, they can't pitch you in less than 30 seconds. I think if it takes you more than 2 minutes to pitch somebody, you've already lost their attention. We live in the world of ADHD, right? If I got to talk to you for 10 minutes about my software, you're like, what, dude? I'm sorry, I blanked out, tech nerd. And so, the pitch is huge. The offer is huge. The second part is, and this is the real power move, objections. You need to write down objections. Every objection that you get, you need to write. We all know that I need to talk to my partner. I need to sleep on it. I need another day. I need to look at my finances. I don't have the money. I'm scared. Not sure if it'll work for me. Like, there's a list of common objections that we all get. And you need to write. I'm telling you, if you would do this, you will make a shitload more money on the phone because of confidence. This is confidence. And I talked about confidence being a big factor in sales. But writing all the objections down and then writing the rebuttal to the objection. I don't, need to talk to my spouse. Okay, awesome. Is she going to ask you, is she going to say no? What are you going to do if she does say no? Well, then what are you going to talk to her about? How about you go ahead and give me the credit card? I'll put it on file and you talk to her. And if I don't hear from you tomorrow, go ahead and charge it. We'll get everything rolling. If something happens, just call me. Right? So then I've handled that objection. If I write these objections and rebuttals down, a piece of paper, index cards, whatever the hell, and I study them daily, then before I get on the phone, I know to expect these. So when I hear somebody go, well, I got to talk to my, that's on my list. You know what I'm saying? Like, I already know it. And then instead of being emotional, like, oh man, you got to talk to your partner, you know, and feeling betrayed and all the things we feel as a salesperson. No, you're just confident. You know that the comeback for that is right there on your list, and you just say it, and you say it with confidence, and you say it like you've said it a million times because you have, and all of a sudden those objections get handled, and you on your end have removed the emotional stress from the process because you're prepared. And then when you get an objection that you never heard before, you're like, oh, fuck, that was different. And you fuck it up. Okay, that's fine. Write it down. And so the next time when you might actually get it again, you have a rebuttal and you're prepared for it. That's a real power move for phone sales.
I love it. And when, as you said that just there, the objection that you've never heard before, I would love to hear people's weirdest objections that they've never heard before. So guys, share this on your Instagram stories. Tag us both. Yours is at Hardcore Closer, right? Mine is at Lauren Tickner. And I would just love to see that because it's always so funny. So I'd love to hear yours, but mine was actually a guy on my team. His was that, this actually happened just a couple months back, is that he needed to speak to his board of advisors for this it was just the most random thing. This kid was 18 and he needed to speak to his board of advisors. I don't know. We hadn't heard that one before. It was kind of crazy, but kind of cool. But what's yours?
You know, I spoke at Funnel Hacking Live years ago, and the crowd was like, so funny story, Brunson asked me to speak at his event. I'm like, yeah, absolutely, man. And honored, you know, it was like the Funnel Hacking 2 or 3. And right before I go on stage, I'm going there to sell this program. And right before I go on stage, the dude's like, hey, man, we haven't made enough money. You can't sell. Like, it wasn't Brunson, but Brunson sent the dude. But it was like his security's like, we took your last 2 slides of your PowerPoint out, so you can't sell. Sorry, we're trying to make the money on this. I'm like, well, motherfucker, right? What an asshole thing to do. I came here to make money, and then you kind of remove that, whatever, right? So I get on stage. I get up there, and so now, shit, the last 10 minutes of my deal was a pitch, right? And so now I'm like 10 minutes short on time. So I'm like, you know, what am I going to do? I'm prepared to go through all the PowerPoints, and I get down to the end where my other pitches were supposed to be, and I was like, hey, if you guys want to, just come up, give me your objections, and I'll handle your objections live. This is on YouTube, by the way. If you just Google Ryan Stewman funnel hacking, there's the full thing, and then 5 minutes where I just did the objections part. But one of the guys was a salesperson, and he sold like these meal prep containers, right? And he comes up to me and he says, you know, I've been selling meal prep containers for the last 5 years. So, you know, we make the food, we put them in the container, we ship them out to our people. And the biggest objection that we get is that the lids are hard to close. And right there in front of everybody, I was like, sounds like that's not the only thing that's hard to close in that industry, right? Like the crowd's all laughing and everything else. I thought, man, that's like the weirdest objection ever. It's like the lids are hard to close. Like, I don't know about all that, man. It's like, aren't you selling to fitness people? Are they not strong? Can they not close the fucking lid? Like, not out of shape people aren't doing meal prep. So like, what's going on over here, right?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, though, as well, it's like, you know, he said that this always happens. So if that is something that you genuinely keep getting,
yeah,
I mean,
maybe get a different fucking container.
That's
right?
what I'm saying, right? Because like those common objections that you said before, those are the common ones. I need to think about it. All the other ones, those are the ones that, to be honest, should always be pre-handled anyways.
Yep.
Like the one about getting your wife on the call or whatever, like, oh, I need to go and speak to my partner. Well, frankly, before the call even happens,
who else do we need to get on the call?
Exactly.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying. And so just set up a 3-way call, even easier. And so then that just reduces that pressure, because if you're someone who finds sales difficult anyway, you want to set yourself up to win.
Yep.
I know, that's so funny. Okay, cool. Right. Well, with that said, I mean, look, I would say that at this point, anyone who hasn't already followed Ryan, guys, make sure to go follow him. Tag us on your stories. I want to hear the most common objections, the weirdest objections
awesome.
that you've had. Yeah, I'll share it. I will share that over on my stories.
Yeah, same here.
And look, you got a big following. I got a good following as well. So yeah. And then when it comes to, you know, everything that you do with your guys, you know, you train salespeople, you train entrepreneurs on how to increase their sales. You help people build sales teams as well, as far as I'm aware.
No,
Okay.
We help people build companies, you know, but and sales team's a part of it, but it's not like I do recruiting or go in and do sales training. I have some guys that work for me that I sub it out to now.
Got it.
It's just sales isn't, I still do it. I'm still a part of it, but it's just not like my thing these days. And I'm so far removed from it. You know, I haven't really been on the front lines of sales for 3 years, just to be honest, as heavy as like Drewby. My VP that does $500,000 a month in sales, right? So the people would do better to link up with Drewby and learn what the hell he's doing and stuff than they would me at this point. And it's just being honest. A lot of people always let the ego is like, oh, I'm always the man, but at this point I'm the man that's a CEO, and the next generation of sales guy sits in the office next to me, he's killing it, and so I send like he's not a recruiter, but if people wanted sales training in person for their sales team or whatever, Drewby would be the guy that I would send.
That's important though. I mean, being able to say no to opportunities and so that you can open up yourself to say yes to other ones, right?
And I want to do what's best for them. I don't, it's like, my sales stuff is not going to be as put into play as his is every day.
Right. No, I think that's great. Okay, so people should definitely join your Facebook group, which is Sales Pros.
Sales Talk with Sales Pros.
Sales Talk with Sales Pros. I'm in there. I love it.
Yeah, it's good. It's good times.
I always see it because I must like the posts, so they show up at the top of my feed. It's just I find it real funny.
Well, that's how we got connected. Your VA started posting in there because I guess you post in some groups. And I let it go through because you had a blue check. I didn't know who you were, but I was like, that's cool. We have quite a few influencers in here, and maybe she's got something to say or whatever. And then you hit me up and you were like, oh, I'm sorry, my VA did that. I know that's your group, whatever.
Yeah, that's
but I was
so
like,
funny.
That's cool. But while I got you here, like, what do you do? How did you get a blue check? And that's how we started talking.
Oh my God, that's literally the funniest thing. Yeah, I actually forgot that was even how we got connected.
Yep.
It's so funny. Yeah, we actually see some good results from posting in those groups.
Groups are amazing.
We slowed it down recently because of the Clubhouse leads.
Yep.
But we're going to get back on that soon because, wow, it's amazing because just so that everyone knows, I was posting quote unquote was posting huge value. We call them impact posts,
right?
And basically they're just full of value. But you want to know the key part to it. I'm sharing my secret now, so anyone who sees my post. So basically, midway through the post, what you do is you write a point, and then you say. So I think I can't remember what the post was about, but I know one off the top of my head is whereby I share some tips when it comes to building an online team. And then tip number 3 out of 5 or something is about having an accountability chart. And then I write on it, and if you guys want to see the accountability chart that I use with my team, just let me know. And so I call it a sideways CTA because it's a sideways call to action. Yep. You're not DM me if you want this.
Right.
It's just just let me know, low pressure, whatever. And then tons of people start commenting I want it, tons of message requests, I want it. And so that's what we do in the Facebook groups there.
The groups are amazing because there's no ads. It's the only place on Facebook there's no ads. And it's a true community, and Facebook's putting a lot of emphasis on it. So I mean we do millions of dollars a year from Facebook groups as well. I think I'm in 118. But same thing, we put value-added posts in there, and people get to know us. That's that power move,
Interesting. So you go in other groups as well, huh?
Yeah, and I'm an admin of 6 groups that have 10,000 or more people in that I started for business, for salespeople, for entrepreneurs. So just cool. Different segments so that I got a different message going to each group so it doesn't get confusing,
That makes sense. Something that I've heard a lot that a bunch of people are doing, I've never tried it myself, but they are doing JVs with people that own groups or they're buying rights to groups.
Yeah, or they're buying the group. I've sold a few groups.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think buying the rights to be able to do promos in the group, that's interesting. Because, if you're selling high ticket and you just get one client from it.
Yeah, I sold a real estate agent group that I created. It only had 3,000 people, but they're very targeted, all high performers. And I sold it for $20,000,
right?
To a loan officer. He wanted to do their mortgages, and I had already sold them all the shit that I was going to sell them. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow. Okay, well, that's cool. Well, guys, join Ryan's groups. They're really, really cool. My name is Lauren Tickner. This is Impact Schools Podcast. I think that's all for today. And thank you so much for coming on, Ryan. This has been fun.
Yeah, glad you come down to Texas and we got to do this. So awesome.
Yes, loving it.